He runs it.
Right here. I don't hear nothing.
1 second.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Straight Talk with Grover Thornton. The show is designed to inspire, educate, and to inform you how government, state, local, and national impact our lives. I want to apologize again for a little technical. Many times you're watching things, the satellite doesn't work, TV goes off. So we have these little problems, these little glitches, but we're happy to be on the show. First thing I'd like to say is Happy New Year to everyone. We're in a new year. Hopefully things will be better, but we started off bad, I can tell you that. We have problems with the national government. There's the problem of the debt limit. They can't seem to get things straightened out. It seems that the Republic doesn't care whether the government pays its debts or not. We do have a lot of debt. We have debt of $35.5 trillion, $35.5 trillion worth of debt that the government owes. They're talking about cutting Social Security, talking about cutting Medicare 5 years. They want to renew it. And Social Security was started in 1935 by President Roosevelt. And it's to keep people from at least having to be able to put something in their bellies to eat. And the Republicans have never cared about anything. And it's disgusting to me how the American people sit down and allow the Republicans to take charge of the Congress after all the wonderful things that President Biden has done, and the Democrats. I can believe it. They thought they're going to have a red wave of 65 votes, but they only got 7, I believe it is. They got one joker there. Santos lied. He's a white Herschel Walker. You had a black Herschel Walker lying to the people. Now he's a white one lying, showing that the color of the skin has nothing to do with a person's character. If you know good, you know good. I don't care what color you are. And they really have this country in a mess. Now there's a mess with President Biden by having documents in his car. However, nobody can equate the same two things, parallel the same thing. Trump lied. Trump said the document, they had to get a subpoena for the FBI to search to see whether what he had. And of course, the FBI put them all out so people could see them. He had them in a desk where anybody can open the drawer and look at them. But Biden did have them in the car, having a lock and key in his car. And he should not have had them. No question about it. It was a sloppy situation with him. I tell him to his face, you knew that when you became president, you ought to know what you had in your office. But one thing it was that they turned him over immediately to the archives. Trump said it belonged to him. So that's the problem that we have, and I hope that we can get that straight. But the Republicans are looking for something, and they're trying their best to paralyze that situation with Trump, with Mr. Biden, and the two things are diametrically apart and they're different. Also, I want to say that we were surprised to see about these taxes. The hands who run the government paid no taxes. 2 years they didn't pay $750 or one. Sometimes he didn't pay none. How you gonna be the president of the United States? All the people paying the taxes and he's not paying, but the crazy people are putting. They're going right away like a man like that and try to run for president again. You need to be in jail. All these other people are going to jail. Look what happened in Brazil. Mess around, they arrested 1,500 people immediately when they tried to overturn the government. But we're messing around. They're scared of Trump. Why shouldn't they be scared of him? If they put enough people in the jail, okay, you already got the Oath Keepers head man. He's trying to appeal. He got about 15 and 16 years. Now they're about to try the Proud Boys, and I hope he get the same thing. That's what they need. All of them. I don't understand. And I'll tell the Attorney General to his face, Mr. Garland, that's the name. Mr. Garland, if you don't put this man in jail, your name is going to be mud throughout history as long as this country lives, but people read the history. He need to be in jail. That's what he need to be. Discuss it with this country. It's getting worse. Also, now you got people also on the national level. They will start an investigation. What I can't understand about the American people, McCarthy back in October, if he won the speaker's seat, he's going to have investigation. He's going to do, and they've already started. Oh, this thing about Biden with all over documents. Oh, they're going to really run with that. Now they find people in Ukraine. I'm sick of giving so much money myself. But the fact of the matter is, we're tied into that. And that man Putin is just killing people, bumming their infrastructures. And we're not dropping a bum on Mr. Putin's place. His cities are intact. I don't understand it. I really don't. We have so many grave problems. It's getting worse and worse in this country, in the world. It's getting worse and worse. And we need to do something. Then there's the January 6th committee. They finished their job, and I thought Mr. Excellent job, the whole committee. And Ms. Cheney, she was defeated because she wanted to do the right thing. That's the price you have to pay when you do what's right. You do things that's proper and right, you're going to pay a price for it. So did Jesus pay the price of their life, coming to save somebody like us. We don't even deserve it sometimes. Don't love each other, killing each other. It's awful. The Republicans they don't want to remove these automatic type AR-15s off the streets, military weapons. It's awful. I just don't know the fate of our country. If we did come out and vote and to remain a democracy, and all those people that tried to overturn this government, they plotted that before the time for it to happen. They knew they were going to do this. They wanted to keep Trump in power. This is not a dictatorial type country. That's what Trump wanted to be. But we need to show him. The next thing I want to say, we all are going to something in this net with our young people, and drugs, this incarceration. We need to work with our young people. We got to cyber better for the young people. There's a lot of problems throughout the. But I can tell you one thing, what it is, we're away from God. And as long as we're away from him, we're going to pay a price. And it's just like the children of Israel did. I think about we coming to honor Dr. King. And Dr. King, there are only two people that have a national holiday. And that's Dr. King and George Washington. Now we have presidential days and all that, but as far as a federal holiday, George Washington and Martin Luther King Jr. have a national federal holiday. And we fought hard for that. And I got to say this, that I'm not saying this for no special privilege to get no special thanks, but my fraternity, Alpha Phi fraternity, one of the first ones started that. And people all over the country, all our chapters give money and other people from all fraternities, authorized, all American people. Dr. King belonged to every one of us. And we got that memorial in his honor. And he deserved that. And talking about him, and we got a wonderful guest coming on the show. We're going to be talking about Dr. King. And I'm going to show you that the, the, the Elder magazine in 1986, with a magazine of Dr. King's life in pictures. And I'm going to show you some of them tonight. A lot of people have not seen a lot of things because a lot of people were not born back then in 1960. King and his lawyer in his home. And that's, you see all them books, and they ain't love to read. We got to read. Our young people got to read. You got to read to know what's going on in the world. Just sit there and watch TV. Don't think. You ought to at least read God's word, if nothing else.
Amen.
And she's showing the picture of him. That this picture of him lying in his casket at the parade in Atlanta, and there's a casket drawn by the horses. That's where he lying in the casket. That's what during the parade they had this massive parade in Atlanta honoring him. It was a sad day in America. Very sad day, April the 4th. That's another one we're going to show. And I'm not seeing this. They don't show this anyway to the people. Now, this is Dr. King on the balcony at Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. And he was standing on that balcony. Jose Williams, 2 or 3 other people. And the shot came from over some rental house, rundown place. But I still say this. That man did not, he was hired to do what he did. Earl Ray shot the man, dropped the rifle, they find it and all of that. But how a poor man like him running around robbing drugstores and convenience stores, where would he get a whole suitcase of money when they arrested him? When the FBI got him, where did he get a whole case of money? But I'm going to tell you, the book I have in my library here, I read the book about the dreamer, and the man said one thing, and I say this, I believe this the day I die. The government killed this man. Our business people, let me tell you, they lost 3,000 helicopters in Vietnam. 3,000. And one of them probably called over $1 million. 3,000 helicopters. If Dr. King marching all in the street, they could have said minutes. But when he started talking about the Vietnam War, where people suffering in this country, people are hungry, the richest country in the world. I'm looking at the TV every day. They're talking about feed American children. I don't understand that. Why should any child in America be hungry? The richest country in the world. Why should they want people with illness and mental problems sleeping on the streets in Los Angeles, all around, sleeping on the street, cardboard boxes and wrapped up in plastic, trying to sleep on the sidewalk? It's ridiculous. And one man is worth $129 billion. I can't believe that. But anyway, these are some of the society problems that we have. Now look at this massive group of people that was at his funeral in the streets. The massive group of people. And now, I want to, that's the last how many more we have. Because we're going to be past 8:30, and I've got to make up that 15 minutes lost tonight and get started. So I'm not going to let that worry me. Next thing I want to show you, this picture here, it's how black folk got together in 1955. The boycott of Montgomery, Alabama. People work as a team. They walk to work. They have carpools to work, and that was one of the demonstrations. Now, a few of the things that Dr. King said that was very important to me. Like he said if Dr. King said that, and he had these words that he stated. He said, I would love to live to be 90 years old, but he was 38 at the time. But he said, if you're 38 years old and you see things are happening and you're afraid to speak, you're afraid to have a cause, a strong principle, to take a stand, to take a stand, and you're afraid, it'll be 90, but you were just a dad at 38. One of the things he said. Another thing he said was, one of his main quotations and statements was, truth crushed to the ground will rise again. And he also said, The moral arch of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. These are the things that Dr. King stood for in his life, and that he gave his life for his people. He was like a Moses. When Moses led the people out of Egypt, and what did they do? All the wonderful things God showed them, all the miracles, turning the water into blood, the flies, the frogs, no water, all of that. And they still turned around when Moses went up to get the 10 Commandments, and they started worshiping a golden calf. I can't believe it, but that's what they did. And yes, think of black folk parallel as a metaphor towards this. God led us through Dr. King, NAACP, a lot of work, a lot of people lost their lives. And what did we do? We the golden calves of drugs, black people, incarcerated, many of them. The golden calves are not getting involved in the community for voting. They don't get the education. They started these rap music. I have a lot of respect for some of the rap music, very nice, but not the type that bring down black women. And all type of evil things about the own race of women. How disgraceful, how disgraceful. These are things we got to do as a race of people. Now, I'm going to be talking about Black history next month. I think I'll be talking about Black history, and I'm not going to take more than 2 months to talk about 2 to 3 months. Segments on me talking about the black race. I'm going to be honest with you, because we got a lot to do with shaping ourselves as a people. These guns and this killing, like one weekend in Chicago, 100 people shot, dead, unbelievable. Now, I wanted to say these things because that was just the beginning, honoring this great man who gave himself a life that he could have lived longer, but he decided to do what was right. 30, 40 times in jail. And he wrote a letter, which the Black history, I will be showing you some of the pictures that I have on my wall in my office about black folk. And I have a frame of a picture that's really showed Dr. King's letter that he wrote from the jail, and how the ministers in Memphis came down and discouraged him. They thought they discouraged him, about March. And he went to Memphis because men who were garbage workers did not have a living wage. The greatest country in the world, people do not have a living wage. It's unbelievable. $7.50 is a minimum wage, or $7.25, but they can't pay you under that. But a lot of people ain't more than that now. But there's so many do not have a living wage. And America has never been equal and fair with the distribution of the wealth in this country. Never. And when Republicans saw that trickle-down economics with Bush, Reagan, that trickle-down economics, a lot of people suffer. We really have children hungry in America. Senior citizens living terribly in the richest country in the world. I can't understand it. But how can we make that change? We got to be willing to get out and vote. That's the only thing. As black folk, we don't have no money as a race of people. No race in the world has accomplished what we did from the time we was in slavery. We had to fight slavery in 1865, and the 13th Amendment did away with slavery. Then here comes 1877 with Dred Scott case. Then here comes the 1896 Separate Equal case, with against black folk discrimination for 58 years. From 1896 to 1954. 58 years. And we know what? We are still struggling in this country. Still struggling. Racism. Now they turn into the Jewish people. Unbelievable. God is getting tired of this, I can tell you that. I'm tired of this. America put on the front. When I read the other night from the book I was reading about World War II, and where the Jewish people just slaughtered. They slaughtered out of 6 million Jewish people they killed, the Nazis, 1 million were children. Would you believe that? 1 million were children. And I'm going to be talking about slavery. Into this, we cannot overlook these things. That's why they do not want you to talk about the race theory, because they do not want the white children to know how dirty, how low that they treated us, not as we were not human beings made in the image of God. We were men just like them. And white women are made just like black women. And they took advantage of black women. Took advantage, young girls, took advantage. I get sick about it when I see it. When I be reading, I feel time I want to cry. To read and see the thing they did to black children, black people. One black woman had to come down to Ruby Ridge, teach one black girl. They took all the white children out of school to the color of one girl's skin. And nobody came up condemn white people. This white woman came all the way from Boston and taught that one child in that big school by herself. So we have a lot to do with the race of people. And I'm gonna have to come down with some things about people. I'm telling y'all way in advance. And I'm not scared. I don't care. I speak out myself. And my gentleman, I'm going to have on this show tonight, speaks out. And that's the only way we're going to get something done. All right. Now I spoke about Dr. King. I talked about the last thing I'll say. He said these words: the measure of a man, and I quote him, and a woman is not how they stand in times of convenience.
Yeah.
But how they stand in time of courage and challenges. That's when you can see the measure of a man. And like President Kennedy said, that the best example of a good man and a man is things that produce. That's what makes a good man. All right, now let me get ready to come to my guest here tonight. I have a distinguished guest here as far as I'm concerned. He's the type of man that I always tried to be in all my life. I've been working on my black since I was 18 years old. I'm going on 9, and I thank God for that. And He must have a reason for me to live as long as I live. And I have a pretty good health for my age, too. But when I was a young man, I didn't throw myself away. Always going and doing something constructive. I have in my presence, ladies and gentlemen, people that listen to me, that young lady from Texas, who I talked to my son in Seattle, Washington, my good friend in South Carolina. And I hope y'all are listening tonight. And my son was talking about all the friends on his face page, on his whatever you call it, talk about listening to this show, where I would try to educate my people. I love my people, and I want us to be outstanding. And the gentleman we have on tonight is the wonderful, I think the world of him, Reverend Dr. Linda Smalls. Dr. Smalls, how are you this evening?
I am excellent. I am excellent.
I can hear you.
Just got through a few minutes ago with another edition of Tell It Like It Is. Can you hear me?
Well, that's what I know. You just like me. Yes, sir. I hear you. Can you get a little louder? Well, yes, sir. I can hear you, but I wish you were a little louder, but I can hear you. But you've always been a man that I looked up to. And I spoke at your church one time, Midway Baptist Church, a very progressive church in this community. Some of my friends that I went to college with, they were members of your church. But you know, Dr. Smalls, I got to say this, you heard the old saying, a chip does not fall far from the block, from the tree. Your mother, Mrs. Mamie Smalls, I'm telling you what I know. She's now 100 years old. I know it got to be about 100, right?
She is 100, be 101
Dr. Smalls,
next month.
can you hear me?
She will be 101 next month.
Isn't that wonderful? And I want the world to know that his mother was one of the top leaders in the political advisement when we demonstrate downtown on Broughton Street, and we opened the doors to Martin Luther King Jr. said Savannah was the most integrated place in the South.
That's right.
I had a chance to meet Dr. King. I had a chance to meet Thurgood Marshall. I had a chance to meet Ms. Constance Morley, who would have been the first black woman on Supreme Court instead of Brown. And even Ms. Brown spoke highly of Mrs. Constance Morley, who put black kids in the University of Georgia and all that foolishness in Mississippi with James Meredith. She was a marvelous lady. And I came on one day and saw the tenant when she died from that old cancer. I was really hurt. But your mother was an outstanding person, Mrs. Mamie Smalls. Now, and this right here, I want this up to the people. This organization, that's one of our ballasts where we had strong leadership. And your mother, this was the executive committee, and my name is right on it. Groverthon, I was on the executive committee. Your mother was one of the outstanding workers in the political advisor kind of demonstration we did, Mrs. Mamie Smalls. And you, sir, a chip off the old block. And I would have been disappointed in you if you had been on the opposite side. And you know, I tell it like it is now. You know me, Reverend Smalls. I'll speak. Reverend Smalls, you know, I'm so happy to have you on the show. And I want to ask you, I'm going to ask you some questions dealing with our city. But let me ask you something on a national level, if I might, sir. Being a man of God, this is my perspective. Would you think one of the problems that we have in this nation, in the world, as a matter of fact, but I'm thinking about this country now, where I live, is that we're away from God? What's your thinking on that? Am I wrong with my theory?
There is no doubt that at this juncture, America has morally slid away from its bearings in terms of its relationship to God and religion. Even those who are purporting to be religious practitioners are not really religious people. They are businessmen. They are people who are taking advantage of folk. For every real preacher, we've got 100 preachers that are just in it to see what they can get out of it. And so we are in a case of almost moral bankruptcy in the nation. That's white, black, blue, and green clergy. But then when it comes to black clergy, which is our bastion and has been our bastion for strength, for human dignity, we are now bankrupt in our black clergy. Our black clergy does not stand up, speak up, or show up for the issues that beset the community. Black clergymen showed up at Ebenezer. They showed up and told General Sherman 160 some years ago what he ought to do for black folk. We don't have a group of clergy like they did that day. Men who were born slaves, men who understood the power of the white community at that hour. We are so much better off materially and so much worse off in terms of our determination to see about more than ourselves. Right now, the black clergy in Savannah are weaker than they've been in my lifetime.
You know, Dr. Smalls, I'm glad you made that statement. Civil rights struggle, I can name you outstanding men. I didn't know you then as a young man because I'm older than you, but because I could tell you about the wonderful work about your mother. But I can remember I worked on the campaign like Reverend Stale, pastor of Bethlehem Baptist Church. He sued the Board of Education to integrate the schools. Reverend Jadon, Methodist Church, Reverend Patterson, Reverend Quarterman, the leader Dr. Gilbert and Mr. W. Lloyd, Bishop Scott. All those men had backbone. What's wrong with the minister today? And listen, white people do not take care of them. White people do not take care of them. And they were like a man like Dr. King at 28 years old, turned the country and the world upside down. And like you said, they're not the same. Why is it? What is it? You being a minister. For instance, you take for instance, King, I don't know anybody's view.
Yeah. But Dr. King warned us of the fact that as we became materially better off, we would become morally less determined. He warned of that because it started happening while he was fighting. That's why he had to write the letter from the Birmingham jail. And he did not write it to the White Citizens Council, to the Ku Klux Klan, or anybody else. That letter was written to other black clergy because the slide away from black clergy being moral agents for the black community had already begun. And so, and at the end of King's time, the very next movement was to take the movement out of the church and try to put it in the banquet hall or try to put it in the conference room. And the church is our moral foundation. We can do anything under the moral strength of serving God, but we can't demand righteousness from greed, from avarice, from material hope. The difficulty is people with no money, and I'm going to say this, the average pastor now has a great front. He drives a new car. He lives in a cul-de-sac, but they don't have any money. They literally, they're from paycheck to paycheck. And they've credited themselves in the holes, and so they feel like they can't speak because anything taken from them will be a disaster. Whereas if, like you said, I grew up in a house where I was taught to have something, to save some money, to not need the system. So for the last 30, 40 years, I haven't borrowed any money from anybody at all. I don't buy fancy cars. I don't buy houses that I can't afford. And so we've been able to amass rather than have to beg. So that independence and the fact that the Litway Missionary Baptist Church is a sure place for me to pastor from. Litway supports my efforts in the community. Litway, that makes the big difference.
Well, Dr. Smalls, the first book that everything you're saying is absolutely the truth. But Dr. King wrote his first book was Why We Can't Wait. And one of the things that you stated in your statements and observations, that he challenged the ministers. He said it's wonderful for the ministers to sit up and talk about all the glorious things in heaven and all of that, and why man is living around all this prosperity in an earthly hell. Even Jesus said he came that you may have life and have it abundantly. So the ministers, they do have a responsibility to really, the things that would help and include justice and freedom and everything else. Now, let me ask you another question. Let's take the question of immigration. Now, my thinking is this. My own opinion. My thinking is this on integration. The whole country has developed by being a melting pot, all types of races in this country. But unfortunately, they took the black race that made us a bunch of racist leaders, which I can never understand how the government would let 13 states after the Civil War just run them. But I never understand that. 13 states, and we had all the other states. We had 48 states, and 13 out of that 37 states allowed them to do that. But Dr. King was saying this about getting out and doing the good, wonderful things. But when you come to the integration, these people want to come from these other countries. Listen to me. It's good for them to come if they apply and come like they ought to come. But just to leave their countries from these places like Nicaragua and all those places down at that southern border and politics like that, they take away jobs. They take away resources that could be for the American people. And we got a lot of people living in poverty. We got a lot of people unemployed, because we do have a good employment market right now. But a lot of the jobs in the market are for people that don't have the skills to do. But these people come here, and I think it's wrong. What's your view on the immigration problem? We got a serious problem. You can't let all these people come into this country.
Well, let me give you some insight that's actually of the exact opposite opinion. First of all, the way you build a country, particularly in America, is based on the number of people who contribute to the system. If we brought more people in that were young and willing to work, and we allow them in and get in the system, that would have more people paying taxes, not less. We'd have more workers working and paying into the systems like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and all that. Let me give you an extraordinary fact. The nation that inviting the most people to come in as immigrants is Canada, because their culture is growing old. They need more people to work and pay taxes to supply the people who are now on their equivalent to Social Security. The reason we're fussing this thing about Social Security is if you got more workers working, paying Social Security, then the Social Security fund will flourish. But keeping people out of the country and having them go underground to work off the books is not helping. Besides that, Black folk and
No,
white
it's
folk
not. No.
we're not going to do the menial labor that these people are willing to do and do well. And so I am of
Well,
the
that's true
exact
too.
opposite. I'm of the exact opposite. Open the borders. Bring me your tired, your poor, and anybody else who wants to come and build the nation, because you need people working, paying into the system, and the more you have, the more will go into the system, and the dynamism of adding workers instead of keeping the people out. The reason that argument is being made has nothing to do with them coming, taking Black folks' jobs. The reason they don't want immigrants in this nation is because the white population will become a minority within the next 20 years. They already know it. And the more immigrants come in, the less percentage and the less self-determination whites will have. That's why the insurrection took place. They want another form of government that doesn't depend on citizens and votes. They want a form of government where if we are in charge and we're in power, we can execute our will. It's not about
Well,
people coming off the border undocumented. The thing is, they don't want this nation to become a nation of all minorities. The white people are still the majority of our citizens. They are fast over the next 30 years, 20 years or 30 years, they will simply be the largest minority in America. That's the issue. The issue is not.
That is true. Be the minorities and African Americans.
They don't want more immigrants because they will lose self-determination. End of story.
And I tell you something too, doctor, on this abortion issue. That's, they have the leadership as far as the majority of people in the country now. But these white women, they don't want no bunch of babies, and they want to stop these Black women from having a bunch of babies. And that's going to, but see, they don't come out and say these things. You got to thinking and reasoning about it. If they stop the white women from, they got the majority of the leadership now as far as the population. But white women and Latino women, they keep having babies, and so they got to stop them. So because the white women ain't gonna be having a bunch of babies, and they say the 20, 30 years they'll be the minority. Well, look what happened in South Africa. The Black majority for many, many years, and the minority was ruling the majority to Mandela. And Freedom Mandela, what they do, threw him in jail for 27 years.
But that's exactly the point I'm making. Is exactly
I'm asking, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. The point I'm making is exactly this. The issue here, as far as Trump was concerned, the issue as far as the Republican Party is concerned, this is a simple issue. They are not going to be able to maintain control of the nation, because even when they have more money, money doesn't vote. People vote, citizens vote, and every baby born from an illegal immigrant, if that baby is born on American soil, that baby becomes an American citizen no matter what the status is of the parents. They know that. They're trying to lock up the border to keep them babies from being born on American soil and becoming American citizens.
That's what I just said. Yeah, that's what I say. The only thing I'm saying is that when let the immigrants come to the country legally. I'm not saying don't let the immigrants in
I got
because
a
a
question.
lot of times, a lot
I
of
got a
them they
question.
come
No,
here.
I got a
Yes,
question.
sir.
Do they stop
Yeah,
any European? Do they stop any Europeans from coming here and staying?
I can't
Do
hear
they
you.
stop
Say that
any?
again.
Do they stop any Europeans from coming to America and staying?
No, sir.
The
And
answer
no, I
is
agree
no.
with you there. I agree with you,
Okay,
and I said
well,
this
if they're
too.
not
When you had
stopping
the
the
unrest in
Europeans,
Haiti,
don't stop. If they're not stopping the Europeans, don't stop the Venezuelans. Don't stop the Guatemalans. Don't stop the Mexicans. If you're not going to stop the French, if you're not going to stop the Italians, if you're not going to stop the Russians, don't stop the people from our southern border.
that's
That's
true.
Mamie.
Just like, for
Mamie
instance, too,
said that.
when they had all that unrest in Haiti, and they can't stop them trying to leave from all that unrest and confusion and killing, what did they do? They turn them back. They made them turn around and go back. So that's what I'm saying. I had
Yes,
one
they
more
did.
question I want to ask you.
But they did that because they were black. They did that not because they were Haitians
Yes.
or not because they were immigrants. They did that because they were
No,
black.
they did it because they're black. Oh, they did it because they're black. Now, what? Now, let's look at the economy a minute about the wage. I did a research on by calling. I didn't bring it with me tonight. I'll talk about it some other time, but I had it broken down, or what the House of Representatives person made by the hour and by the month, by the hour, and I compared that to what the average citizen was making. It's unbelievable how much money they make and how much money they make an hour. I didn't have it with me. It's terrible. But they don't want to give you $15 for minimum wage. Because if a young man and a young lady marry, and both of them are working, and $15 an hour would give them $31-something thousand a year, then both of them would have an income of $67,000 a year. They could qualify for a house. You could never qualify a house with no $7.50 or $12 or $20 an hour. You see what I'm saying?
Well, here's the thing.
But they don't want to give you, the Republicans give you the minimum wage, an increase of $15 an hour.
Well, but here's
what's your view on that?
What happens is it's a simple thing for me. Poverty breeds crime. Poverty breeds additional desperation. It's not based on race that we have more crime in the black community. It's based on poverty. When in the 30s, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky was Jewish. Dutch Schilt was Dutch. Al Capone was Italian. Okay, so but all these men had one thing in common. All these crooks, they were born and being raised in poverty, which turned them into crooks. And so here's the thing: why would we think that people who are being kept systemically in desperation won't resort to crime? It doesn't make any sense. And if you keep a person, if you're working and you can never get ahead, you can never keep up, you're watching your mother suffer, you're watching your sisters and brothers suffer, you're gonna try something. If you're any kind of young man, you're gonna try something, you're gonna take a chance. And you shouldn't, but you do. So the way we can stop these things, we've got to make mechanisms for upward mobility today, not yesterday, not last week. Today, I had two young men with me, both of them ex-offenders, who worked with me on the float for the Weeping Time for Martin Luther King Day Parade. These young men have been working with me for months, okay, on different jobs, doing different things. They're good workers, but they can't get ahead on a regular job. They can't pay their bills on a regular job that they can get. So we've got to come up with mechanisms for upward mobility. And we in Savannah, we do have a chance to really change things. The logistics the fundamental logistic landscape in Savannah is exploding. The number of million-plus square foot warehouses in Savannah that have been built and brought online in the last 5 years is unprecedented. We have jobs and job opportunities. We need
Yes,
to
sir. I saw all them. I saw all them big warehouses. Yes, sir. You're right about that.
We got to plug people in. We got to settle the mechanism to take these kids from off the corner and put them in the warehouse where they can make a living and pay for their children to go to college. And I've done it, and you've seen me do it since the time in the 1980s when I painted your church, First African. From the time I painted that church, I've been helping young people get on their feet out of the crime revolving door and into life. We can do this, but we need
No question
to be
about that.
determined to do it. We can do this.
You know, Dr. Smalls, I have always hated. I can remember when you're not telling a lie, let the people know this. You had a house with guys who were on drugs, but you had them trying to rehabilitate them and get them trained, put them in a job and to work. That I know. That I know for a fact. But I've always advocated when these people, instead of having a pipeline from the school right to the jail, or right back over and over and over, drugs and no work, why they don't try to train these people with some skills while they're in jail? And you can have companies to get them a chance to work. Why?
Actually, they tried.
I was talking with a young man today. Go do some.
They tried that about
Say that again.
30 or 40 years ago. About 30 or 40 years ago, the system in the state of Georgia was called, watch this, the Department of Rehabilitation. It had the term rehabilitation in the name of the correction system. Now it's the Department of Corrections, not rehabilitation. So they just dropped that. They were training people
That's what I'm
in
saying.
jail to do jobs, to have skills. I came home from prison as a young man with skills that I put to work and was able to rise. Now, I had the advantage of having been called into the gospel ministry. So I had the moral framework to live right and do better. But we really need to help folks rise up. We need to help people rise up. And we can do this.
You know, a lot of the problems we have, two people or have mental problems. I know I've read with Jacksonville, down in Jacksonville, Florida, when they arrest these people like more than one time, they send them immediately to an institution to be evaluated, see whether they have mental problems, whether they need, mental help, rather than put them back in society and be destructive themselves to other people. No caring about anything. So that was my view, that they need some kind of training where they could go to work.
Well, here's what I found.
I guess
I found
that's my thinking. And what happened?
I found that if you take people and you give them marketable skills, when I did the rehabilitation on First African Baptist Church, your church, everybody working on that job came from out of trouble. Everybody that was working for me. That was a program that I put together with me coming out of prison. Because what I saw was people were in prison because they had no skills. They couldn't paint. They couldn't hang sheetrock. They couldn't do plumbing or wiring or anything. Yeah. And so they had no way of earning a living. And so for several years, and you saw that process because you saw me working at First African Baptist Church with those young men. Those young men, one of them stopped me a week ago in Home Depot, hugged my neck and said, "Do you realize, Pastor Small, that you married me and my wife 30 years ago?" That was one of those same young men. Because if we the church particularly, not even just a society, the church, if we want to, we can help people. Reverend Manuel over there at Second Ebenezer started a feeding program 5, 6 days a week. When he started it, they said, we're not going to be able to afford to feed these people every day, 5, 6 days a week. How can we do this? They started feeding people in 2008. They fed people today. They've been feeding people 15 years. And people said you couldn't do it. The church can do anything it makes its mind up to do. The church can save the weeping time property. The church can stop young men from being killed wantonly by police. The church can stop the situation where everybody has all these babies out of wedlock. The church can do this, but the church has got to get right first.
Well, all these wonderful things that you're saying, how can we put them into effect? I mean, all the ministers, you're a minister. I'm a church with a big minister, and all these big churches in Savannah. Well, what can we do? How do we corral the people? I mean, where's the catalyst to start this?
We are working.
I know you, like I said, you did a lot of good things that you did with your men. How do we get it started?
The key to it is, listen, every man in his generation has to do what's in front of him. He has to lay down the path and do the work that comes to his hand. Now, that's what I do. I try to do it by example. And we do have some extraordinarily capable young men. But the modern trend is for ministers to care for themselves more than they care for the community. We have to reverse that. And I am trying desperately to reverse that by showing them by example that you can be right and good and just and moral and also successful, even rich. I'm trying to show them that there is blessings in doing it the right way, standing up for truth, speaking against lies, calling out injustice. We do well when we do it God's way. They're not trusting God's way. They're not trusting to tell the truth in spite of.
I'd love to see that happen. That the ministers in this community will get together and do a lot of things that you're talking about doing, because this cycle of incarceration over and over and over. These young men were walking the streets, standing on the corners. Y'all not doing your job and moving within the community. I said one time that when we had so much killing, you remember when the Jiggles gang was in Savannah killing everybody every week? And I said to a minister one time that there's enough men to get on the weekend, break the city down on Saturdays, go walk the street, catching men in the street, so many on the east side, some on the west side, some on the middle side, and talk to these young men, corral these young men. Now, I was told by a minister that this company was supposed to be building in Bryan County or someplace, but the man said he can't find men because they got to be tested for drugs, and they find out they have drugs, they fire them immediately. How do you get them out of that cycle? How do you get them out of that position? How do you do it? I mean, we got a very moral problem with young black men.
Well, here's what I've been
doing. We do have it. That drugs have really wrecked them.
Well, I can't get everybody out of it, but here's what I've been doing. 7 years ago, Linda Wilder Bryant's son was killed. And then we had a meeting. We had some ex-cons come in to talk to some young men at Litway. And it came to me while we were there that these young men needed access to the jobs on the port. In order to get on the port, you need a thing called a TWIC card. The card costs $125.25. Coming out of that meeting, I started buying young men TWIC cards. I've been buying TWIC cards now for 7 years. Of the people that I bought TWIC cards for, we had one guy go back in on a misdemeanor probation. And we had one guy go back in on a regular misdemeanor, something he did in a fight. Other than that, these young men and women that we bought those trick cards from, they're working on the riverfront. They're making that 18 and 19, $20 an hour. They've got longshoreman cards. This is not hyperbole. This is not a theory. This is a way to do it. I've told the chief of police. I've told I've told everybody. Now I saw this guy says it's not ministers' fault to do this. It's not ministers' fault. It's parents' fault because they are not teaching at home. They are letting them do what they want, and to some degree, that's right. But here's the thing: if you got a toothache, you need a dentist. If you got a footache, you need a podiatrist. If you got cancer, you need an oncologist. So no one human being or no one part of a human's life is sufficient for a human. So we need the church, we need the schools, and we need the parents, and we need them working in concert. Now, I'm going to do my part everywhere I go, where I have influence. But here's the thing. We spend $100,000 for one person, and we call them the guy who's the woman who's going to deal with violent crimes. We've hired these people over the last 6 or 7 years. They haven't touched crime. They haven't touched crime. If you take that same $100,000, you can buy 1,000 twit cards and reduce the crime in Savannah by percentages. Just buying them cards. That's not theory.
See, if a lot of ministers got with you, Dr. Smalls, if we got about 2 or 3 more minutes, but if a lot of ministers got with you,
a couple of preachers have donated some. A couple of preachers have donated some.
Maybe you need to call a conference with a lot of the ministers and say, a lot of ministers together.
Listen, we're trying
for a lot of these people. Now this is the year that we'll be having the city coming up. So I'm gonna have you back on the show as we get closer to the election, because I think a lot of things should be done by the city government and not being done. Because I don't understand. I read an article and everybody got the Social Security, and I was happy for that. But you know what? When I got the letter from the Social Security man, my friend and I were talking, and he got $2 more than what I got. But guess what? I get a letter, the mortgage company raised my mortgage payment. So therefore, when I look at what I got from Social Security, I net by $12. See what I mean? But that was a good thing you talked about, sir, really, putting these people to work. So I want to thank you for being on this show, because you made a lot of good comments tonight, and I wish you would commend us this and see can y'all get this thing universal and get it off the ground. And I'll always be grateful to you, because I got my first start working in mass communication some 20 years ago. And I went from there to Chester Dunham show, and then I have this online show. And I'm grateful to you, because you've been a person. I hope you'll see Savannah, listen to what he said, the things that he did with his own money. What he did with his own money. And every time I get together and do some of the things that you have suggested and what you did, we make a better community for our young men. Because I hate to see our men just growing incarcerated. My only 2 boys got involved with that mess. But thank God I'd raised them in church. They changed their whole lives over the last 15 years. Peer pressure. These are things that we got to work with. Reduce pregnancy. That's another problem.
Let me give you one more thing.
Then another thing I say to the parents. Yeah.
You have to do one more thing. You have to give equal opportunities. A young man went before city council today or yesterday. A young man went before city council to try to get a license to do business. Now, I'm against alcohol, but it was for an alcohol license. We have 600 and some alcohol licenses in the city of Savannah. We have less than 10 that are African American. That is an atrocity. in 2022. We've got to get the playing field even. For the city council to turn that young man down the third time when he's trying to do everything he could, that's just wrong.
Did they give a reason why they turned him down?
Well,
did they give a reason?
Did
they give a reason why they turned him down?
Linda Wilder Bryant said she talked to the neighbors and they said they
Say that again.
Linda Wilder Bryant said she talked to the neighbors and the neighbors said they didn't want it. And they voted it down.
Well, sir, I really thank you for being on the show tonight, and I will be calling you back, particularly when we get into the political season. We have a mayor race this year that's very critical for some of the things that really need to be done in the city of Savannah. And I like to know about the poverty rate. Is it the same as reducing? Like Dr. King said, 3 things he really like to do is to reduce poverty and violence. Those 3 things, poverty and violence. And we have to work towards that and have to do that with people like yourself. So I would like to see you call a conference together and tell you ideas of some of the ministers and see if we can make this a natural thing in our community to make it worthwhile and save a lot of our young people. Because I'm going to be honest with you. If the trend does not change, our young women won't have no decent men to marry. But they all be in the jailhouse.
Thank you for
having me. We got to make a change. We got to change the paradigm. We got to do it. So I want to thank you very much for being on our show tonight. And I'm sorry that we had to start a little late with little technical problems, but it takes time to work a lot of these things out. But even though I'm a little past 8:30 because I was making up that time, but the thing I want to say is that we want to thank you very much for being on the show again. And I'll be calling you and I'll be listening for you to put this effect, what you were talking about today. Put in. All right, sir? Thank you very much, Reverend Smalls. And give my regards to Miss Mamie for me. Amen. You be blessed. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the show to end tonight, but I want to close as always that we must keep our faith.
Like this. Like this.